What if I told you that the greatest threat to your peace in old age might not come from strangers, but from the people you've known the longest? As we journey through life and begin to embrace our later years, a remarkable shift happens. We stop chasing noise and start craving stillness. We stop being impressed by chaos and start valuing clarity. And perhaps most importantly, we start recognizing that true connection isn't always tied by blood, but by mutual respect and emotional safety. But here's a hard truth. Many are too afraid to say out loud. Sometimes the people you need to protect yourself from the most are the ones who share your last name. Let's talk about the first kind of person you must avoid in your golden years, the guilt tripper. And please hear this, not just with your ears, but with your heart, because this type of person doesn't always come with anger or open hostility. No, they often come dressed in concern. Their voice sounds soft, their words seem caring, and their presence feels familiar. But beneath that mask lies manipulation, and its favorite weapon, guilt. You won't hear them yell. They won't raise their voice. Instead, they sigh, they look disappointed, they go quiet, not out of peace, but as punishment. You tell them you can't make it to something, and suddenly you're ungrateful. You say you need some rest, and they accuse you of being selfish, all because, for once, you've chosen to honor your own needs. If you're not careful, you'll spend your precious later years in a constant state of apology, apologizing for setting boundaries, apologizing for being tired, apologizing for aging. You see, guilt trippers operate on the unspoken belief that your life is a debt they're owed, that just by existing you're taking up too much space, too much energy, too much of something they think belongs to them. Their words might come in subtle jabs like, "I guess I'll just do it myself since you're too busy," or more direct stabs like, "After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me." But let me make something very clear. Your life is not a transaction. You don't owe anyone your well-being, not your children, not your siblings, not even the friends who've known you for decades. You don't have to sacrifice your peace. To be a good person, you don't have to deplete your energy just to keep someone else comfortable or keep the family dynamics intact. That's not love. That's coercion wrapped in obligation. That's emotional blackmail camouflaged as devotion. The older you get, the more sacred your time becomes. And guilt trippers? They are master thieves of time. They pull you into circular conversations that drain your spirit. They create emotional debt you never signed up for. They keep you stuck in obligations that leave you depleted and resentful. You might hear them say, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me." But love, real love, is not proven through exhaustion. It doesn't demand that you abandon yourself in order to show up for others. It doesn't ask you to shrink so someone else can feel bigger. And perhaps the most damaging tactic of all is how guilt trippers make you question your reality. You begin to wonder, maybe I am selfish, maybe I'm not doing enough, maybe it is my fault. That's how they win. They get into your head. They tie your self-worth to your obedience to their needs. But real freedom begins the moment you recognize this for what it is: control. And the truth is, in your later years, you don't have time to be controlled. You've earned the right to peace. You deserve the space to rest, to breathe, to reflect, and to fully live without guilt as a shadow over every decision. You've spent decades showing up for others, raising children, holding families together, supporting friends, working hard, giving more than you had. Now, it's time to reclaim your energy. Not to be harsh, not to shut people out, but to be free. Because freedom isn't selfish, it's sacred. There comes a point in life when protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. I'm not saying you should walk away from everyone who's ever been difficult. Life is full of imperfect people, and grace is still a virtue. But there's a clear line between imperfection and manipulation. And some people, sadly, specialize in using guilt like a leash, subtly pulling you back into cycles you've outgrown. That's not love. That's not care. That's control in disguise. Familiar, yes, but toxic all the same. You see, the most loving thing you can do in some relationships is disappoint expectations, especially the ones that were never fair to begin with. And I know that's a hard truth to digest, because for many of us, we were raised to equate love with sacrifice, peace with silence, and loyalty with suffering. But here's the truth. Say it with me. Just because someone is your family doesn't mean they're healthy for your spirit. Read that again. Let it sink in. Because too many people spend their entire lives trying to heal wounds caused by people who shared their last name. At this stage in your journey, you are no longer responsible for fixing everyone's problems. You are not the glue that must keep every broken piece of the family together, especially not at the cost of your mental and emotional well-being. You are not a referee for unresolved tension. You are not a therapist for people who refuse to heal. And you are certainly not anyone's emotional punching bag. You are here to live, to breathe, to laugh again, to reclaim the parts of yourself that got buried under years of people-pleasing. You've earned that right. And listen closely. You don't need to explain your boundaries to people who were never going to honor them anyway. You don't need to plead for understanding. You don't need to justify your desire for peace. You just need to claim it, because this peace wasn't handed to you. It was earned. You earned it through long nights of silent endurance, through moments you gave everything you had and received nothing in return, through decades of staying quiet to keep the peace, even when it cost you your own. Your peace has been paid for with pieces of your life, and now it's time to protect it like the treasure it is. Don't trade that peace for guilt. If someone truly loves you, they will cherish your well-being more than your obedience. They will want your rest, not your exhaustion, your joy, not your compliance. Real love doesn't pressure, it respects, it gives space, it sees you. So moving forward, be mindful of guilt trippers. They may wear the face of family or the voice of longtime friends, but if every interaction leaves your soul feeling heavy, don't ignore that. Your spirit knows. Your heart whispers when it's being manipulated, even if your mind tries to rationalize it. And if you ever need permission to say no, this is it. Saying no to guilt is saying yes to freedom. And that's a trade worth making every single time. Now let's shift gears and talk about another type of person to lovingly distance yourself from: the constant complainer, the eternal critic, the energy vampire. You know the ones. They could win a lifetime supply of sunshine and still complain it's too bright. You invite them into a peaceful moment, and they bring the weather of their own misery. One sigh, one negative comment, and suddenly your calm feels like it's been hijacked. These people don't argue or shout. They don't need to. They drain you with a slow, steady leak of negativity. A sigh here, a passive-aggressive jab there. They see every glass as half empty and want you to stare at it with them for hours. They don't ask how you are. They don't check in on your heart, because it's not about connection. It's about consumption. And in this season of life, your energy is sacred. You no longer have the endless reserves of your younger days. Now every ounce of energy matters. You must protect it, conserve it, and spend it where it brings life. But energy vampires? They don't care. They'll talk for hours about every single thing going wrong in their world, and when you offer solutions, they wave them off. Because they don't want help, they want a host. You leave the conversation feeling depleted. One phone call, and suddenly you're carrying weight that doesn't belong to you. One visit, and the lightness you felt earlier is replaced by a cloud you didn't ask for. And the worst part, you start to feel guilty for wanting space from them, but you shouldn't. You are not obligated to hold space for people who never ask how your soul is doing. You are not responsible for cheering up someone who refuses to let go of their misery. And you are not selfish for wanting your peace to remain intact. You've earned your tranquility. Guard it fiercely. Have you ever left a conversation feeling drained, uneasy, and couldn't even explain why, like a heaviness just settled on you out of nowhere. That, my friend, is not coincidence, it's spiritual weight transfer. It's what happens when someone else empties all their chaos into your soul, and you unknowingly carry it home. But let me say this, with all the clarity you deserve, you were not placed on this earth to be someone's emotional landfill. You weren't designed to be a dumping ground for unresolved bitterness, constant complaints, or endless negativity. Especially not now. Not in this chapter of your life where every moment, every breath, every ounce of peace is too sacred to waste. And yes, I get it. Some of these people are the ones who've been in your life for decades. People you've known since childhood, a sibling, a childhood friend, a next-door neighbor, or even your own adult children. That makes it complicated. That makes it hurt. But just because someone has a long chapter in your story doesn't mean they get to write your ending. You have the right, no, the responsibility to protect your peace. If someone consistently brings nothing but complaints, criticism, or drama into your space, it's okay to create distance. Not because you're cold, not because you don't care, but because you finally realized self-respect means knowing when to step away. You can love someone and still say, "This is not good for me." You can care deeply and still choose silence over emotional chaos. And you can honor your relationships without sacrificing your peace. Ever notice how you feel after spending time with certain people? Like your light's been dimmed, like your confidence got smaller. That's not in your imagination. That's the emotional toll of negativity. It's subtle, it's sneaky, it's corrosive. At first, it's just a small shift in your mood. Then it's your motivation that drops. Then, before you know it, you're second-guessing things you used to believe in, your dreams, your progress, your worth. That is the high cost of staying close to people who live in a cycle of complaining and pessimism. Here's the truth. Some people don't even realize how negative they've become. They've been marinating in misery for so long, it's become their identity. Every conversation is centered around what's wrong, who's to blame, what didn't work. And if you spend enough time around them, they start reshaping how you see the world, too. You'll find yourself looking for problems instead of possibilities. You'll start noticing flaws instead of beauty. You'll be carrying bags of bitterness that were never yours to begin with. That's the real danger. They don't just drain you, they distort you. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept that. You have the power to choose your environment. You have the right to tighten your circle. You deserve to be surrounded by people who fill you up, who challenge you with love, who remind you that this life, even with all its chaos, is still filled with beauty worth seeing. And if that's not who's around you now, maybe it's time to adjust the room. Let me tell you something you won't hear often enough. Peace is powerful. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it doesn't demand attention, but when it's missing, you feel it in your body, in your spirit, in your very bones. That's why protecting your peace matters so much. It means being intentional about who you allow into your emotional space. It means guarding your energy like it's gold, because it is. And yes, that might mean ignoring some phone calls. It might mean not responding to every message. It might mean pulling away from conversations that only leave you heavier. That's not rudeness. That's self-preservation. That's wisdom. That's growth. It is absolutely okay to say, "I love you, but I can't carry this with you today." That's not cold-hearted. That's clarity. You are allowed to choose stillness over storm. You are allowed to sit in peace instead of stepping into someone else's chaos. There will come a moment, if it hasn't already, when you realize that you're no longer available for emotional gymnastics, that you're no longer interested in performing peacekeeping roles in other people's personal wars, that your silence, your serenity, your emotional clarity, they're not up for negotiation. You've outgrown the noise. You've outgrown the guilt. You've outgrown the cycles. And in this new season of your life, you are free to say no to dysfunction and yes to peace. every single time. At some point in life, peace becomes more precious than approval, and your energy becomes more sacred than someone else's convenience. You've stepped into a season where your soul is calling for restoration, not repetition. A time for healing, reflection, and sacred stillness, not for entertaining chaos that doesn't belong to you. And that, my friend, is something to be deeply proud of. You've already carried more than your share. You've walked through storms, stood strong through decades of sacrifice, showed up for others again and again, often when no one else did. Now your energy must be guarded like treasure, because it is. So when the critics raise their voices and the complainers come knocking, trying to drag you back into their whirlpool of drama, remember this: your peace is not up for negotiation. Not anymore. Now let's talk about something more personal, something that hits a little closer to the heart, and often a little harder. The people who only show up when they need something. You know the ones. They treat your love like a service station. They swing by when their tank is empty, take what they need, your time, your comfort, your resources, and drive off the moment. They're full. No thank you. No check-in. No sincere connection, just silence until the next emergency. And here's the thing. This isn't about being cold or unwilling to help. That's not who you are. You've always had a heart that wants to give, to uplift, to see the best in others. You remember who they used to be. You hope deep down that maybe one day they'll come around just to enjoy your company, not to make another withdrawal. But life, if you're paying attention, will teach you something valuable. Some people never come unless there's something in it for them. And no matter how long you've known them, no matter how deep the shared history runs, that's not love, that's not friendship, that's convenience disguised as connection. It's dependency, not devotion. And if you're not careful, it will drain you dry. One of the hardest truths to face in your later years is this: being needed is not the same as being loved. Let that sink in. Some people don't treasure you for who you are. They treasure you for what you give, and they stay close not out of affection, but out of access to your kindness, your loyalty, your generosity. You become the easy yes, the reliable shoulder, the silent sacrifice, and every time they return, they take something a little more precious than before. Not just money, not just time. They take your peace, your presence, your emotional bandwidth. And they leave you more depleted than when they arrived. They always have a good reason, don't they? A compelling story, a desperate plea, a promise that this time, it's different. And for a moment, your heart wants to believe them. You want to believe it's real, that maybe they're coming to reconnect and not to consume, but the cycle repeats. You give, they take, they vanish. And you're left holding the silence. That silence, it speaks volumes. It's not just absence, it's a reminder of the imbalance, a reminder that you gave from the heart, and they took from the hand. But here's what's dangerous. It doesn't break you all at once. It wears you down gradually, a little more each time, until suddenly you're second-guessing your boundaries. You're apologizing for your no. You're feeling guilty for choosing rest. You're wondering if you're the one who changed too much, when in reality, you just woke up. You realized you were being used. And it hurts, because it wasn't always like this, and because a part of you still remembers when the love felt mutual. But here's a truth worth holding on to. You are allowed to evolve beyond being everyone's safety net. You are allowed to say, no, not today. You are allowed to protect the peace you've earned over a lifetime, because if someone only shows up when they need something, if they only value you when they're in crisis, if they disappear as soon as they're filled up, that's not a relationship. That's a transaction, and your life is not a convenience store. You don't exist to serve the same people who disappear the moment their needs are met. Your worth does not depend on your usefulness to others. Your presence is not a product to be consumed, You are sacred. Your time is sacred. Your peace is sacred. And when someone treats you like a pit stop instead of a home, you are allowed to close the door. No bitterness. No big announcement. Just a quiet, firm decision to stop giving away what was never appreciated. Because one of the most powerful things you can say in this season of life is this: I love you, but I will not be emptied by you. There's a kind of silence that speaks volumes, not because it's empty, but because it's finally honest. It's the silence that falls after you stop picking up the phone for someone who only calls when they need something. The quiet after you say no instead of your usual, exhausted yes. That silence, it reveals more about the relationship than all the conversations that came before it. And if you really listen to that silence, you'll hear the truth it's whispering. They weren't here for you. They were here for what you could give. It's not an easy realization, especially when the person was once close to your heart. Someone you prayed for, fed, maybe even raised. Someone who was there in your family photos, your memories, your stories. But at some point, you've got to ask yourself, what is this relationship actually costing me? Not just in money, but in emotional exhaustion, spiritual depletion, and self-worth. Does your peace disappear every time they walk into the room? Do you feel lighter or heavier when the conversation ends? If you're constantly left drained, disrespected, or dismissed, it's time to face the truth. You're not in a relationship. You're in a transaction. And here's the part that stings the most. When you stop feeding the pattern, when you say no more, they don't thank you. They don't respect your boundary. They attack your character. Suddenly, you're the selfish one, the ungrateful one, the one who's changed. Why? Because guilt is their currency, and they'll spend it all to keep you in their control. But hear me clearly. Choosing peace over performance is not selfish. It's sacred. The moment you stop being available on demand, the moment you stop showing up just to meet their needs, the moment you say, I can't keep doing this, they'll show you who they really are. Let them walk away. Let them be angry. Let them twist the story if they need to, but you stay rooted because you know the truth in your bones. You were never created to be used. You were created to be loved. And in this stage of your life, you don't need people who only remember you when their world is falling apart. You need people who remember you on ordinary days, people who think of you when nothing's wrong, when nothing's needed, when love is the only reason. You've already given so much of yourself. Now it's time to receive not just scraps of attention, but real care, real connection, mutual presence. Mutual respect, and that starts when you stop being anyone's emotional vending machine. So when they show up with another request, when they reach out only because they're in need, pause. Look at their pattern. Ask yourself, were they there for me when I needed someone? Did they show up when I was the one in pain? If not, that wasn't love. It was convenience. And now, let's talk about one of the hardest types of people to spot. The controllers. They don't always look harmful. In fact, they often sound helpful. They wear the mask of concern, speak softly, and act like they have your best interest at heart. But beneath that soft tone is a strong grip, and what they want is not your safety. It's your submission. You see, control doesn't always come in the form of raised voices or ultimatums. Sometimes it comes wrapped in advice you never asked. In suggestions that feel like commands, in doubts about your judgment masked as care. And it's one of the most subtle forms of emotional suffocation. They say things like, that's not safe for you at your age. You're not thinking clearly. Let me help you make that decision. But what they're really saying is, I don't trust you. And when someone doesn't trust your decisions, what they're really after is control over your life. And you weren't made to be managed. You were made to be respected. You've lived long enough to know who you are. You've earned your voice, your wisdom, your independence. And anyone who tries to take that away from you, whether loudly or silently, is not helping you grow. They're trying to shrink you so they feel bigger. Controllers come in many forms. Some are loud and obvious, always telling you what to do and how to do it. But the more dangerous kind, they smile while they do it. They speak softly while they undermine your confidence. They seem concerned, but constantly cause you to question yourself. And that's how it starts. You begin to shrink yourself. You start deferring decisions. You ask for permission when you don't need it. You start doubting what your heart already knows, but not anymore. Not in this season. Not with everything you've already walked through. You've earned your freedom, and no one gets to put a leash on that. Not under the name of love, not under the disguise of help, not under the pressure of guilt. You've lived a full life, survived storms others can't even imagine, and yet, somehow there are still voices trying to steer your ship. They don't shout, they whisper. They mask their doubts in gentle tones, in just checking in "Are you sure?" It sounds like love, but deep down, it's something else. It's not about your safety, it's about their comfort, and it can make you feel like a child in a life you've already earned the right to lead. Let me give it to you straight. You are not someone who needs to be handled. You are someone who deserves to be honored. You've weathered recessions, raised families, lost loved ones, started over, stood strong. You've grieved, loved, fought, prayed, laughed, sacrificed. You've seen war and watched peace bloom again. And if all that hasn't earned you the right to trust yourself, then what has? So when someone comes along and questions your every move, when they make you second-guess decisions you felt sure about, pause. Step back, because not all concern is care. Some of it is low-level control dressed in love's clothing. You want to donate something to someone in need, and they say, "What if you need it later?" You talk about downsizing your home, and they tell you, "You're not thinking clearly." You mention wanting to travel, and they say, "Isn't that risky at your age?" What sounds like guidance is often fear, but it's not your fear, it's theirs. And if you're not careful, you'll start living their fears instead of your dreams. Age doesn't erase your ability to make choices. It refines it. It gives you clarity. It sharpens your sense of what matters. It teaches you that peace is worth more than approval, that presence matters more than opinion. And anyone who doesn't recognize that isn't helping you, they're limiting you. Yes, this gets harder when the controllers are people you love. A child who thinks they're protecting you, a spouse who fears change, a friend who believes they know you better than you know yourself. Because their voice is familiar, you listen. Because their concern sounds kind, you start to doubt yourself. And slowly, so slowly, your world begins to shrink. Not because you wanted less, but because someone else decided you couldn't handle more. And here's where the shift must happen. It's not your job to keep others comfortable with your life. It's your job to live fully in your truth, even if it means disappointing people who think they know better. Even if it means letting go of relationships that only thrive when you stay small. You don't have to earn your freedom again and again. You already paid for it, with time, with heartache, with wisdom, and don't let anyone mistake your vulnerability for weakness. Needing help doesn't mean you surrender control. It doesn't mean you hand over the steering wheel. It means you invite someone in as a partner, not a prison guard. Controllers will act offended when you push back. They'll say things like, "I'm only trying to help," but there's a difference between helping and handling. One comes from love, the other comes from fear. One lifts, the other restrains, and you've lived too much life to be led by fear. You need people who trust your voice, not question it. People who walk beside you, not over you. People who celebrate your wisdom instead of trying to rewrite your story. So if someone can't trust your judgment by now, ask yourself, what more do they need to see? Because you don't need anyone to co-sign your decisions anymore. You just need the confidence to say, "This is my life. This is my path. I choose it." Yes, setting boundaries will be hard. Yes, they might get upset. Yes, they might accuse. you of being ungrateful or stubborn, but the truth is, you're not being difficult, you're being free. You're reclaiming the dignity that was yours all along. Sometimes that sounds like, I love you, but I'm going to make this decision for myself. Or, I hear your concern, but I trust my heart on this one. That takes guts, but it's the kind of strength that leads to peace. So if someone in your life keeps putting you in a box, if they act like your dreams are too big, or your voice is too bold, or your choices are too risky, stand tall. Let them know. This life is still yours to live, and you're not done living it, because now, as you move toward your final chapters, you're not looking to survive. You're looking to soar. Have you ever felt yourself shrinking in someone's presence? Not because you were weak, but because their spirit refused to grow. You were reaching higher, healing, evolving, but every time you got near them, it felt like stepping into a shadow from decades ago. Their mindset was frozen in time, their energy heavy, their words laced with blame and bitterness. These are the ones who refuse to evolve, no matter how many birthdays they celebrate. They may wear grey hair with pride, but they never develop the wisdom that's supposed to come with it. They've mastered the art of survival, but not the courage to transform. Being around them feels like walking backwards, like time is folding in on itself. They talk endlessly about what others did wrong, but never once consider their own part. In the story, they gossip without reflection, complain without conviction, and cling to the same toxic cycles like trophies they earned in pain. Here's a truth that might make some uncomfortable. Growth doesn't end when your hair turns silver. It begins to matter more because now, this chapter of your life, it's not just about looking back. It's about preparing your spirit for something deeper. Peace that passes understanding, clarity that only comes through time, and a legacy that echoes long after you're gone. But you can't walk into that sacred peace while holding hands with people who are still at war with their past. You can't build your legacy with voices around you, still arguing about who said what 20 years ago. These are the ones still dragging a fence like it's a badge of honor, when in truth, it's just a heavy chain. They want to rehash old arguments, fight old battles, dwell in old wounds. But listen to me, you don't need to carry the weight of their emotional stagnation. That's not your job anymore. It never was. Just because someone has been in your life for decades doesn't mean they have earned the right to walk with you into your future. History does not equal destiny, and routine is not the same as purpose. Yes, they'll look at you and say, "You've changed." Let them. That's the best thing you can do, because growth is change. And where there's no growth, there's slow death, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. See, your evolution might make them uncomfortable. Your peace may disrupt their inner unrest. Your healing might irritate the wounds they've ignored for years, but that's not your burden to carry. Familiarity is not a good enough reason to stay stuck. You can love someone from a distance. You can honor your shared history without sacrificing your future. You can say, "I respect where we've been, but I refuse to live in it." You've probably met elders like this. People full of stories but not insight. They remember every detail of the past, but they've never asked, "What did I learn from that?" They talk about regrets like they're stamps in a passport, but have no reflection to show how it changed them. That's not wisdom. That's just memory. And memory without meaning is a loop. It keeps you circling the same mountain year after year. And let me ask you this. Did you come this far in life just to go in circles, or did you come this far to break cycles? You came for rest, for healing, for truth, not just tales. You came to leave something behind that's greater than wounds, a legacy of love, wisdom, and peace. But that cannot happen if you're still weighed down by the pain of people who refuse to look inward, people who won't reflect, won't release, won't change. Their chaos becomes your burden, their bitterness your responsibility, and soon, without realizing it, you're watering dead plants, hoping for fruit that will never come. Here's something hard but necessary. Some people aren't interested in growing. They're not seeking truth. They're not looking for healing. They're looking to be right. And if you spend your final years trying to prove a point to someone whose heart is closed, you'll miss the very joy you were meant to experience. Let that sink in. You were not called to rescue everyone. You were not assigned to fix those who enjoy their dysfunction. You were not born to babysit bitterness. You were born to bloom again and again, even now. So take inventory of your circle. If someone keeps you stuck in the past, it might be time to let go, not out of hate, but out of hope. Hope that your life, even now, still matters. Hope that your peace is sacred. Hope that you are still becoming someone deeper, freer, wiser, and if that means walking alone for a while, so be it, because you're not just aging, you're ascending. Have you ever noticed how your soul starts to suffocate around people who refuse to grow? You're striving for peace, for wisdom, for light, and yet some remain stuck in cycles of blame, bitterness, and smallness. And you end up carrying the emotional weight of people who aren't even trying to stand up. Let's be clear, it is not your job to carry grown adults through growth they refuse to embrace. You're not here to drag anyone into maturity. You're not a therapist. You're not a fixer. You're not a walking rescue mission. Your purpose now is to walk in peace, to keep evolving, and to intentionally surround yourself with souls on that same journey. Find those people, those rare gems who are still curious, not just loud, who are still learning, not locked in pride, who are open to being wrong, open to healing, open to more. And when you do, when your circle reflects your growth, you'll feel it immediately. You'll breathe easier. Your thoughts will quiet. Your heart will feel lighter. That's what healthy connection does. It doesn't pull you down. It lifts you up. Because growth creates space. Space for honesty. Space for peace. Space for the real you to finally rise. But being around people who refuse to grow, it's like trying to breathe underwater. Their energy suffocates your spirit. Their smallness seeps into your dreams. Their bitterness sticks to your skin. You don't deserve that. You deserve relationships that feel like fresh air, not emotional fog. People who challenge you in love, not chain you with fear. People who sharpen your spirit, not shrink it. So if that means shrinking your circle, then so be it. Because I promise you this. A small circle filled with truth, growth, and love will always beat a big circle full of noise and numbness. And when you find yourself surrounded by people who are still bitter about the past, still blaming the world, still recycling the same complaints they've repeated for decades, you owe it to your future to let go, because there's one more type of person you absolutely must learn to step back from, especially now in this sacred and reflective season of life. And that is the one who mocks your faith, the one who scoffs when you talk about prayer, the one who rolls their eyes when you speak about God, the one who chuckles under their breath when you say, "I'll trust his plan." This isn't about people who believe differently. This is about people who actively disrespect the very thing that has held you together, the very belief that carried you through unspeakable storms, that whispered, "Don't quit," when your world was falling. Apart faith is not weakness, it is strength. It's the invisible thread that held you up when life knocked you down. It's what steadied your hands when they were trembling. It's what gave you rest when nothing made sense. And anyone who ridicules that, anyone who mocks your beliefs, anyone who makes you feel foolish for trusting something greater than yourself, they don't belong in your inner space, not now, not ever, because as we grow older, we don't just accumulate years, we accumulate perspective. The questions get heavier, the reflections get deeper. You begin to wonder not just how you lived, but why. Not just what you earned, but what it meant. You start thinking about eternity, about purpose, about what really matters when the lights go out and the world gets quiet. And in that sacred space, you need people who speak life, who respect your journey. Even if they don't walk it themselves, they honor the ground you stand on. But some are so trapped in cynicism they can't stand anything they don't understand. So they mock it. They mock your hope, your worship, your belief in miracles, and if you're not careful, if you let them close, their sarcasm will start sounding like wisdom. Their doubt will start echoing in your soul. Not because they're right, but because their voice is constant. Don't let it happen. Don't let their disbelief dim your light. Don't let their jokes plant seeds of shame in your soul. Don't let their shallow smirks rob you of the truth that's kept you going this long, because faith is not fragile. Faith is fire. It burns through confusion. It stands when logic fails. It sees what eyes cannot. It's why you're still standing after all the things that could have destroyed you and anyone who tries to smother that flame with their opinions. They don't deserve to be near your warmth. Faith isn't just what got you through the storms. It's what kept you breathing when the air felt thin. It's the reason you're still standing, still hoping, still holding your family together. Through seasons of heartbreak, uncertainty, and loss. People who don't understand that kind of strength might call it superstition. They might scoff or dismiss it as outdated. But what they fail to see is this: faith doesn't make you naive. It makes you unshakable. It doesn't blind you. It grounds you. It makes you wise beyond explanation, because it's built on survival, not theory, on experience, not speculation. Some of the people who dismiss your faith might be the very ones you love the most. A lifelong friend who's grown bitter with time, a sibling who once believed but now only mocks. Even a child, your own child, who now calls it old stories, who's too enlightened to believe in what they can't measure. And yes, your love for them runs deep. But loving someone doesn't mean giving them permission to trample what your soul holds sacred. This isn't about starting debates. This isn't about forcing anyone to believe what you do. It's about protecting the soil of your soul, because you've fought too hard for the peace you now carry. You've bled for this. You've wept for this. You've held on through nights when it felt like heaven had gone silent. And still, you believed, you prayed, you trusted. And through it all, God showed up. You felt his hand in the chaos, heard his whisper in the stillness, received grace when you least deserved it, and no degree, no intellect, no sophistication can explain that away. So I'll say this with all the love I can: if they haven't walked through your valleys, they don't get to mock your light. Not every relationship belongs in the inner sanctuary of your soul. Sometimes the kindest, wisest thing you can do is love from a distance. You can still pray for them. You can still carry hope for their journey. But you don't have to let their cynicism poison your peace. You don't have to let their doubt chip away at your truth. Because this is spiritual warfare disguised in casual conversation. It's not always what they say out loud. Sometimes it's the energy they bring, the sarcasm, the eye rolls, the jokes masked as concern, and those little moments, if you let them, will chip away at your faith until you begin to question what you already know in your bones. But you don't have to let it happen. You deserve to be surrounded by people who respect your walk, even if they don't share your path. People who sit beside your truth, not poke holes in it for fun. Because at the end of this journey, when our time here is done, it won't be about who we debated or who we convinced. It will be about how deeply we believed, how well we loved, how much peace we carried through the storms. And my prayer for you is this: that when your head hits the pillow at night, you feel anchored, not because life is perfect, but because your soul is steady, because you stood your ground, because you didn't let mockery silence your reverence, because you chose faith again and again, no matter who was watching. So when the scoffers come, whether they bring jokes, silence, or judgment, just remember this: you don't need their agreement to stay close to God. You only need the courage to guard your faith like the treasure it is, because that faith, it's your fire, and it's what will light your way home.